I feel like I can bring this topic up, whereas somebody that's considerably younger than me probably shouldn't, because I did cover the 1998 team. So I can give you, I believe, some perspective that only an old man can. So when I brought up to you, this defense is comparable to the 1998 defense, which essentially won Tennessee a national championship. What was your first reaction? Was it, oh, Dave's been drinking again?
No, it's basically it's Dave wanted to take a conversation that he and I sometimes have in the ether in an unserious way and say, hey, why don't we put this on the radio? Or why don't we put this on YouTube real quick? Why don't we just go ahead and put it out there for the public?
Okay. So let's break it down by position. And some of these are difficult because Tennessee plays a nickelback now. So that's going to affect
Greatest
some of
band
these.
ever. Love Nickelback. They weren't out in 1998. I mean, the 98 team wasn't even graced with the amazing music of Nickelback.
Terrible band. By the way, those on the poll question saying I'm most confident in Vols running back play 94%. So we can just chuck that one. That was a terrible one. All right. So now the new one. Dave says Vols defense is comparable to 1998. He's crazy onto something. So I ask you this on the message board. Where do you think that there is a bona fide advantage either way? So you can tell me 98 safeties versus 24 safeties. You can tell me the defensive ends, whatever. But here's how we're going to break it down. We're going to break it down by position, and then we'll get Caleb's take and my take as well. So do we want to – I want to start back to front. Back to front. Safeties. This group is better than 1998.
That's crazy.
No, it's not.
That's insane.
Okay. That's Deion Grant, an All-American. That's Fred White, who they were a perfect fit together, like two pieces of the puzzle. It's clearly the safeties in 1998. And that, God bless Will Brooks, that's not comparable. Would we agree on that?
There is absolutely no way any of the safeties would start on that 98 team unless you moved Boo Carter to safety. He could be in the rotation, but not as a freshman. So, yeah, there's absolutely no way the safeties, the safeties in 1998 are just.
Well, I'll tell you this too.
Gold standard.
Ask Brian Darden. They would have beat the attitude out of Boo Carter before he got on the field. I'm not sure.
Yeah, but I think Boo Carter's mentally tough enough to where he would have handled it and he would have accepted it. I think they would have liked Boo Carter's attitude a little bit.
Yeah. I know Fred White is very high on Boo Carter. Okay. Defensive line better than 1998.
We'll get to that. We'll get to the line.
Is what Ed says. I know. I'm just giving a shout out to those guys. All right. So cornerback. Basically, we're talking about Dwayne Goodrich versus Jermod McCoy. I'm willing to say that's a wash. So that would take you to the other corner. That was probably the one Achilles.
Steve Johnson, was that?
Yeah, that was probably the one Achilles heel for that team. Nothing against Steve, good buddy, and we were broadcasting majors together. But right now, I would take Ricky Gibson over, and they alternated Steve and somebody else who suddenly escapes me. But they alternated those guys, and that was always kind of an issue at that other cornerback spot. So corner, I would say 2024.
I'll lean with you because of the Ricky Gibson advantage, but I don't think Dwayne Goodrich and Jermod McCoy is a wash. It's hard to say this now because of what happened, which derailed Dwayne Goodrich's football career, but the Cowboys drafted Dwayne Goodrich to be their next Deion Sanders. As much as I like Jermod McCoy, no one's going to say this is our next Darrelle Revis when they draft him in the NFL.
Okay. Ed is for UT, agrees with me. Cornerback is better than 1998. Now, this is where it gets difficult because you have two different defensive formations. So here's the way I suggest it. We do interior linebackers and we do outside linebackers. Okay. So we're essentially saying Jeremiah Thielander versus Al Wilson.
Come on.
It's Al Wilson. Okay. Now, if it were Keenan Pili, I'm not saying.
No.
Right. If it were Keenan Pili, we could at least have the discussion physically, right?
No,
But, well, okay. We would be more apt to have the discussion than T-Lander, right?
if I had the number 1 draft pick and I was drafting a Tennessee player and couldn't draft a quarterback all time in history, Reggie White would be number 1. Al Wilson would be number 2.
Okay.
Al Wilson we keep forgetting this. Al Wilson in the NFL was on track to a Hall of Fame career. The only thing that kept him under the radar was he could never start over Ray Lewis in the Pro Bowl. But again, it was Ray Lewis. But also, he got his career derailed by a neck injury. The dude was a 4-time Pro Bowler, 5-time All-Pro. He wasn't, everyone talks about him as just a leader. He was an amazing player.
No, I agree. Now, let me argue this. In 98, he missed, 3 games because of injury? So, yes. Keenan Pili, T-Lander together. Am I getting anywhere, or is...
I would take Al Wilson for 6 games over T-Lander. As long as I got him against Florida and Arkansas and in the national title, no. I'm sorry. Al Wilson is like, I'm not going to let you disrespect Al Wilson like that, Dave.
Fair. And I'm just trying to provide a sounding board for you because I agree with you. You know that.
He should have his number retired.
Yes. Ed and General Ursus say linebacker all around. Now, let me make this argument. If you're talking about outside linebacker, you're talking about 2 guys in Raynoch Thompson and Eric Westmoreland. Okay. So you only have 1 linebacker, outside linebacker now because of the way they play with the nickelback. So if you wanted to say Arian Carter compared to Raynoch, I could make an argument for Arian Carter.
I think you could definitely say Arian Carter. I would say Arian Carter, but okay, here's why I would say Raynoch.
Adam beat us to the punch and agrees with us. Great job, Adam.
You're basing this off of more potential than actual production. I think Arian Carter will go down to be a better linebacker than Raynoch Thompson. But is Arian Carter right now better than Raynoch Thompson was in 1998? Raynoch Thompson was much more experienced playing in the system in 1998. And I think that's where you kind of draw the difference a little bit. Also, part of this is, let's be fair. There's more put on the outside linebackers today than there was in 98. Is that fair to say, Dave?
Yes. No, that's very fair. And let's face it, Raynoch Thompson, because of what was in front of him and behind him, he was allowed to play free and he hit people like he was mad at them.
Yes. Didn't he and Fred White have like a joke over like trying to alternate over who could get a sack at different times? Was that Raynoch Thompson that did that?
Probably. That sounds like a Fredish thing to do. All right. And I mean that as a compliment. And then the defensive line.
Let's start with the tackles and then we'll go to the edge.
Okay. All right. You want to break it down? All right. Start with the tackles. What do you got?
All right. So we're talking Darwin Walker, a longtime NFL starter, and Billy Ratliff, a would have been longtime NFL starter had his career not been derailed by injury.
Jeff Coleman.
And Jeff Coleman. That's 3 guys. All right. This one, you got Amari Thomas, Omar Norman Lott, Jackson Boy, Elijah Simmons. I can just go down this list. Tyree West, Dominic Bailey. Look, I'll say this. I don't think anybody on this defensive line at tackle is better than Darwin Walker or Billy Ratliff. I do think the depth of this interior defensive line makes this interior defensive line better.
I agree. I can't add anything to that. You summed it up. Defensive end / edge rusher, which we have to say now.
And this is another part of where the format has changed over time because defensive ends back in the day were always with their hands in the ground.
You mean they didn't ask Sean Ellis to drop into coverage?
No, they didn't.
Like they do James Pierce. You're right.
Who,
all right.
Who could win a race between Sean Ellis and Will Brooks? Okay, sorry.
Sean Ellis. Close.
That's actually, and that's be the difference of the 98 defense versus now. Okay. I'm going to say, look, we're talking like Sean Ellis in that system versus James Pierce in this system. And that's borderline a wash because as great as James Pierce is, we keep forgetting that Sean Ellis replaced Leonard Little and was as good.
Yeah. Sean Ellis, for the record, ran a 4.85 in the 40. Are you taking Will Brooks over that?
No, I don't know. I honestly, that Will Brooks interception, I'm like, that looked like Tom Brady running for a touchdown, or Peyton Manning. But okay, I'm not going to be mean to Will Brooks, but let's talk about, yeah. So Sean Ellis versus James Pierce. I mean, you could probably go with James Pierce, but I might go with Sean Ellis. But Dave, either way, I'll still say the ends favor this team because I think the other end spot is better. Look, I mean, people are going to disagree with me. I think, going to Joshua Josephs, moving Tyree West out there sometimes, doing that, those guys are better than Corey Terry.
I agree with that, but Sean Ellis was the best of all that we mentioned. He's better than James Pierce. He could anchor down from a run standpoint.
He could.
He's a better overall defensive end. I mean,
so,
and he had a great NFL career too.
Oh, he had a great NFL career. All right, so let's. He
was the 12th overall pick. Do we think James Pierce is going to be better than 12?
He could.
I've heard him projected now at 15th a little bit. I think his stock slipped just slightly.
Okay, so let's do this because I think it's as close as it is. I think we have to say that the 98 team wins, and I'll break down why. I think that ends, defensive tackles, outside linebacker, and cornerback. We'll say all. I'll even give you all those. I'll say they all slightly favor this team. Okay, I will, but they slide all those. You would say this team gets a slight edge, right?
I think, okay, I believe that games are won in the trenches, which I know sounds old school, and you're ready for me to go John Madden, pow, boom. But the reason I would take this defense is I think it is considerably better on the defensive line because of depth. So I would take this defense compared to the 98 defense, and I can't believe I'm saying that.
No, see, and this is where I disagree with you. I think the defensive line is not considerably better. I think it's better slightly. I think the depth is enough to push it slightly over the edge. And so it's slightly better at defensive line, slightly better at outside linebacker, slightly better at cornerback. But Dave, safeties and inside linebacker, the gap is so insane. I mean, let's call it what it is, Dave. The gap is insane between Al Wilson versus these inside linebackers. Heck, I'm not so sure Keenan Peely and Jeremiah Thielander could start over Chris Ranzor, who filled in for Al Wilson. So, I mean, the gap it is
over Ranzor.
Ranzor was pretty darn good when he filled in for Al. The gap is just when you have Al Wilson and that level of a gap, and then you have Deion Grant and Fred White, the gap between those three alone is just so significant. And you're acknowledging yourself, the defensive line. You're actually saying Sean Ellis is better than James Pierce. So while you're saying the defensive line is better because of the depth inside, you're making the case the ends are better from the 98 team. Yep. So I think the gap's too great.